Okay, good afternoon, parents. Yep, welcome to today's session on P4 subject-based bending. Thank you for your patience, and we will start the webinar right now. Right, I'm the principal, Mr. Pick, and we have our colleagues, the various year heads, and our vice principal, Mr. Slim, also with us here today. So if you have any questions, please do type it into the Q&A at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And Mrs. Slim and the rest of the year head will try to answer as many of the questions as possible before we get to the Q&A session. All right, any unanswered question to the end of the webinar, we will address it as a bundle as well. All right. The slides for today would also be uploaded onto our school website, and a video recording of this session will also be shared and uploaded on our school's YouTube sites. So any parents that you know of who have missed this session, or if you want to review some of the items that was being shared later on, you can go to our school's YouTube site. All right, so today's agenda is really about sharing with everyone what is subject-based bending, the rationale for subject-based bending, our school policy on subject-based bending, which is probably slightly different. I think the rationale of subject-based bending is a nationwide kind of framework that every school abide by. But I think each school will have our own slight adjustment in terms of how we approach doing the subject-based bending. So I think while we understand the national guidelines, I think each school, we would still want to pay attention to what each school is doing in terms of the actual way that we do our subject-based bending. So for those of us who have friends with children in other schools, you might find that different schools have a slightly different approach in terms of the way we do our subject-based bending. So here we will share with you the Admiralty way of doing our subject-based bending. Okay, and of course we will share with you how does the whole thing actually works for your child from the end of P4 all the way until the child reaches P6 PSLE. All right, so the national rationale about subject-based bending is, for those of us who are familiar with the education system, we will know that before we have subject-based bending, our students at the end of P4, they will take an exam and they will all be streamed into the three streams called EM1, EM2, and EM3. So that was how it started, and of course, there were there were issues and voices that raises questions with regards to the way students are being streamed at those levels. And one of the points that was raised, okay.
Waiting for Who's Young How from Five Courage. Who's Young How, we come to general office now. Thank you.
Right, and one of the issues that was raised was about how the EM1, EM2, EM3 systems was probably too rough a cut, whereby students with differing strengths in the different subjects are not given that kind of individualized attention and customizations in terms of the different levels that the child will be able to take the subjects in. So that's when subject-based bending come into play, whereby instead of the big rough cut of EM1, EM2, EM3, we now go into this mode whereby each child, depending on their performance in each subject. So at the subject level, we will decide whether they should be taking that subject at the standard level or at the foundation level. All right. So that's pretty much the big brushstroke of why and what subject-based bending is all about. So each subject at the end of P4, based on the child's performance in that exam, and also in terms of the child's performance throughout the year as well. So if you are worried about what if my child suddenly not do well because she's not well at the end of the year, not to worry. We really do look beyond the child's exam result to decide on the child's level of subject that he or she should be taking at P5 and P6. So, and for those of us who have had children from last year, P4, moving into P5, you will know that we actually did that whole batch of subject-based banding without even having an end-of-year exam, because last year the situation for COVID-19 was such that we are not able to have an end-of-year exam, but we were still able to manage to make decision on the subject-based banding. So really, when it comes to the examination result, it's just one of the indicator, and you will hear later on that our school's criteria is such that really exam or no exam, we will still be able to make a good choice. And because of the way we make our choice, the actual scoring of the result might not be that critical and important. What is more important is the child's overall aptitude and attitude towards studies and how he or she performed throughout the periods in the whole year, rather than just the end of year results. Okay, so really over here, the second blocks here mentioned about how if the child excels in the languages, but perhaps need more support in math and science, meaning that if the child's results for EL and mother tongue is reasonable, but math and science were very, very weak, then the options that we would take at the end when the child is taking P6 could be the 2 languages at the standard level, and then the other 2 at the foundation level, or any other combination. So these are the different possibilities that are allowed. And what we want to do is that we want to use this opportunity to make sure that for those students who are able, who have potential strong foundation, to be stretched in terms of their potential in learning the subjects. But for those that need more support in terms of the fundamental understanding of the subject, they will also be given the right kind of support. So that's very much what we want to achieve through P4 subject-based banding exercise. All right, so some of the rationale and thinking in MOE level will be about how each child is unique, different in terms of their aptitude, capabilities, and talents towards the different subjects, and that subject-based banding caters to the different abilities of our children, and that this refinement in terms of the subject-based banding as compared to the past of EM1, EM2, EM3 was actually better in terms of how we customize the different subjects at different level for each individual child. So next we come to the school level decision making. Okay, the line that we draw is actually at 20 marks. So we make decision with regards to whether the child is able to take standard subjects based on this mark cutoff of 20 marks. Roughly, okay. If the child is above 20 marks, straight away, no question asked, we will put them in standard subjects. But if the child score below 20 marks, that's when the teachers, the year heads, the HODs will then come in and make decision as to whether these children should be asked to take standard subject, or should they be taking a foundation subject. All right, so you will find that while we say 20 marks is the kind of line that we draw, but in many cases, we actually sometimes even go below that. If we feel that, well, it's too early to make such a decision, we will actually try our best to keep our children in standard subjects. For those parents out there, if you have older children that have gone through our system, you will know this very well. So in our school in Admiralty, the line that we draw is actually a very generous one. You do not have to worry about your child being accidentally streamed to foundations, if that's what you are concerned about, because our school policy is that we try to keep them in standard subject as far as possible. Even if they are scoring below 20 marks, you will find that in many situations when they move to P5, unless these are the students that our teachers already know very well that there's no point to keep them in standard because they are not able to cope, and they will be scoring below 20 marks in their assessment, then those will be the one that right at the start of P5, we would have asked them to do foundation subjects. And generally for these cases, most of the times, I think parents would also agree with us that their children should be opting for foundation. But if the parents feel that you still want the child to try, actually, we would have that provision as well. for them to keep them at the standard subject. Okay, and why is it that we want to keep our students in standard level as far as we can? It's because of the following reasons. So first of all, the standard subjects offer a better achievement score. In terms of achievement score offered by the standard subject, we go the full range, all the way from AL1, which is the best score, all the way to AL8. Whereas if a child is taking a foundation subject, the best score that he or she can attain is only a 6. So for foundation subject, when these subjects are being converted into AL score, you'll find that the best marks that you can convert it to, no matter how well you score it, is actually 6 points. Okay, 6 and 7. If it's 8, then it is actually a failure. All right, so it's only 6 and 7. So there is not a lot of differentiation when it comes to foundation subject. They are taking the bottom 2 level of the AL scores. All right, so if the child is able to take standard subject, then there is a chance that if the child can do well in the standard subject, then the child has the potential of scoring better than 6, AL6, maybe AL5, AL4, AL3, and so on. Now, with better achievement scores, then that would also translate to a better total AL score for them, which all of us know that the total AL score is the score that the student will use in terms of their entry to secondary schools. And the secondary schools cutoff AL score will be this total AL score. So the better the child's AL score, the wider range of school choices that our children would have. So that would offer another reason why we would want to keep them in standard subjects. Also, keeping them in standard subjects, because last year we also have situation whereby we ourselves, I think at the teachers level, we also debate to say that, oh, you know, like this child, you keep the child in standard, we don't think the child is able to score better than a 6. So would we then feel that, oh, why not we just move the child to foundation so that it will be easier for the child? So sometimes that can come into play and into our discussion. But the line that we will draw is, we again, even if, let's say, by taking standard, knowing the child's performance, the child is still not able to get better than a 6. But we will still, as much as we can, want to keep the child at standard level. Okay, because when the child stays with us at the standard levels, they cover a wider range of topics. And these wider range of topics that are covered when the child stick with the standard course would allow them to connect with the secondary school subjects better. Okay, so that is also another consideration, that we don't just look at marks. And we don't just say, okay, if they are not able to score better than a 6, why not we just move them to foundation? Because once we move to the foundation course, the coverage will be a lot narrower, and definitely the child's range of knowledge, you will find that there will be more gaps if the child take a foundation subject. And then when later on they need to articulate to the secondary level, they will find that there is a lot of things that they have not learned in primary school. And that will not help them in trying to cope with the subjects at the secondary level. So scores aside, we also want to keep them in standard subject as much as possible because of that stronger foundation and better articulation to the rigor of the subject in secondary school that we are considering. All right. This slide is just to show you about the conversion. So you'll find that when a child is taking foundation, the best score that the child can get is 6. So you look at that. Now 8 is actually a failure grade. So even for standard subject or foundation subject, we will tell our students that you need to aim for at least 7. Okay, and these are the mark range. And for the child taking the foundation subject, you'll find that even if the child score 100 marks for the foundation subject, the child's AL score will just remain as 6. So definitely, foundation subject is not like an easy way out. And foundation subject, even though the child can obtain a higher score, but it doesn't necessarily translate to a better AL score because of this conversion that is happening here. So this one here, we just want to explain to the parents about how, because in the past we used to have parents that would say that, oh, you know, in foundation subject, my child is able to score 100 marks, so I'm sure it will convert to a better AL score. The reality is that that's not the case. Okay, so as much as possible, we actually try to keep our children in foundation, in standard. Okay, as long as the child is not in danger of falling into an AL8. So that's why you see the 20 marks cutoff. Okay, you see the 20 marks on the right-hand side in terms of the standard raw mark range, that you see that 20 marks is the minimum score that the child need to attain to get an AL7. So that's the question that we ask. Is the child in danger of getting an 8? If the child is not in danger of getting an 8, okay, we will keep them in standard subject, particularly for math. Okay, so some of us will know that mathematics, if the child get an AL8, most likely the child might be requested to repeat primary 6. Okay, so that's something that we hold very carefully in terms of our children. But then again, I think we also want to mention this, that for mathematics, we are also very liberals. So there's a risk that we take. But I think our teachers generally, when we got that, is that if it's very clear that the risk is too high, that the child will fall into an AL8, we will ask them to do a foundation subject. Okay, so this is something that we are sharing with the parents, so that if your child is in that kind of situation, you know there's this kind of decision making that you will need to think through. Okay, but again, we want to say that for our school, we are very generous, and most of the time, we will just ask the student that at P5, try the standard subject. Okay, if there's any doubt, we will always say try the standard subject first. Okay, so just to explain that at the end of primary 5, so we talk about how we are quite generous and we always want to try to push our students to do standard subjects. At the end of P5, if not earlier, sometimes if at the earlier months, if the child is already showing sign that he or she is not able to cope with the standard, we might actually move them to foundation subjects before the end of P5. But if not, then we generally will look at the child's performance at the end of P5 and then make a decision as to whether the child should continue taking standard subject in P6. Okay, so of course the cutoff point again is 20 marks, but again, we also give some leeway whereby if the teachers feel that the state of the child is that next year, given another few more months, the child might be able to brush up in terms of the foundation in the subject and be able to score better than 20 marks, then the teachers might recommend our children to stay in the foundation, in the standard subject. So for those of us with children who are in the upper levels or might have even been graduated, you know that our school, we are very generous in terms of keeping our children in standard subjects. Okay, most of the time it is the parents who come and tell us that they will want their children to drop into foundation. Okay, and sometimes our teacher will say that, no lah, give your child another chance and keep them in standard subject. Okay, so you know that if you are worried about us streaming your child to foundation subject, you don't have to worry about that. Okay, so for those cases where the children are really not coping very well, taking the subject at the foundation level, number one, avoid them getting an AL8. Number two is also that with that more narrow range of topic that they need to cover, they then actually have a chance to at least build on that fundamentals that they really need to do. Otherwise, if we keep them in standard and then they find that it's so difficult to cope with a wider range of topic, then it's better that they go to foundation, go to a narrow range, and then just focus on getting those pieces right. Okay, but you know that we are very generous, and generally for those that are taking, that we later on really move to foundation, they are really the one that is really at risk of AL8, and that's why we move them there. All right, so that's our assurance to you, and it has been consistent over the last 5 years. Okay, so again, yep, so these are the points that we have mentioned before, that foundation subject AL score is at best 6 points, and also foundation subjects will limit the choices of the subject at the secondary level. You'll find that your children, if they are taking foundation subjects, most likely they will not be able to assess the subject at the higher level in the secondary level. All right. So these are some of the points that we will need to consider. Next, I want to move on to higher mother tongue. So higher mother tongue is for pupils who demonstrate interest in learning the subject and also have the capability to manage their mother tongue language at a higher level. So these students will be taking an additional higher mother tongue subject, the PSLE, on top of the mother tongue subject that they will be taking. And higher mother tongue score is not added into the AL scores. So they will be kept as a separate score, which we will see later on in one of the example. And for Admiralty, we will recommend that students who have done well enough in the P4 mother tongue, our gauge is 70 marks and above to take higher mother tongue. All right, so that's our school's gauge, and in terms of the benchmark that we measure against in terms of our recommendation of our children to take higher mother tongue. The advantage of taking higher mother tongue will be as follows. First of all, many of us would know that higher mother tongue in terms of higher Chinese, this will give our children that edge in terms of their admission to SAP schools, which we will see later on, that when it comes to students with the same AL score, the score, the grade in higher mother tongue will be the deciding factor that will use to do the tie breaking when it comes to all of them at AL, at a particular AL score, which is the cutoff marks for the school. Okay, so we'll look at an example again to explain that. But admission into SAP score, higher mother tongue, higher Chinese is very important. It's something that they look at. And not just in terms of PSLE marks entry into these schools, but also particularly in DSA. Okay, so if our children want to gain access to these SAP schools with higher mother tongue, they can also try to see if they can go for admission in DSA. And similarly, when it comes to DSA, other than the SAP schools, there are also other schools that are offering other language elective program for Malay language and for Tamil languages. Okay, so these are the kind of schools that are open for DSA consideration if our children are taking the higher mother tongues. Okay, so entering into these schools, if your child have a higher mother tongue, that will give them an opportunity of entry into these schools. If not through DSA, then it will be through their PSLE score as well. Okay. Now, if our children are doing well enough in higher mother tongue in primary school, then our children probably can continue taking higher mother tongue in secondary school. And the advantage of that will be that if our children are taking higher mother tongue in secondary school, then the child can officially drop the mother tongue subject at the JC level. So that's another incentive for our children to keep their learning in the mother tongue by pursuing higher mother tongue, because if they are able to do that throughout the primary school and then secondary school, then when it comes to their JC level, they can drop the mother tongue language totally. And that would then free them up in terms of time to study the other subjects. In a way, so they said, okay, but if my child is not going to take higher mother tongue in secondary school, does it mean that there is less reason for our children to pursue higher mother tongue in the primary school? Our answer is that we will want our children to, as much as possible, if they are able to. And our cutoff mark of 70 marks is actually very generous. That and we have students who are scoring below 70 marks that can also handle higher mother tongue. Okay, and we want to encourage them, even if their aim is not to continue higher mother tongue in secondary school, but when they take higher mother tongue in primary school, it will give them a stronger foundation in the language. And once their language foundation is strengthened, when they go on to secondary school, if they're not going to take higher mother tongue, they just take their mother tongue, but with a strong primary school foundation, you will find that the children do not need to spend so much time in their mother tongue subject when they reach secondary school. Then the time saved would then be applied to other subjects, because we know that in secondary school, the students handle a lot more subjects as compared to primary school. So really at the primary school age, to try to study the language at as high a level as possible, actually there's only advantages. And I'm saying this because year on year and year after year, right, we keep having parents that actually the teachers have to keep calling up to try to convince them to keep the children in higher mother tongue. And I think for a lot of our parents, I mean, I'll just be very direct and transparent in that, is that a lot of time these parents, the reason that they give us is that, oh, I want the child to focus on the other subject. Okay, so they say that, okay, higher mother tongue, to take higher mother tongue is depriving, is taking time away for the child to focus on other subjects. I think we will also share this reasoning here. For those of us who have been teaching children, we would know that sometimes, it doesn't mean that when you take the child away from higher mother tongue, the time saved or the effort saved can necessarily be translated laterally to another subject's performance. Okay, some children are just naturally better at languages and not so good in, let's say, math and science. So if you say, okay, I don't want you to take higher mother tongue because I want you to focus on your math and science, you might find that in the end, the child's science and math result might still not be good, because these are weakness area that is not just about, freeing time up from higher mother tongue, that you can get the child up. And really, sometimes if we see our children like that at the younger age, maybe we will need to know that when a child's foundation and interest in math and science might not be that strong already observable in a primary school level, that means that the child's future career might be less to do with math and science. And it might have to be more related with languages. So if we don't even, develop our children in terms of the subject that he or she is strong in, which is the higher mother tongue, so that the mother tongue can become stronger, because this is going to be something that he or she will have to depend on for the future job, then I think we are really doing a disfavor for our children. Okay, not taking higher mother tongue, freeing up time to work on the weaker subject need not necessarily translate to a better outcome for our children. So again, we want to share this with the parents to consider carefully. If your children are good in the mother tongue, really take the higher mother tongue. Okay, we see only advantages for our children, and we will elaborate more later on. Now, this part about same AL score and how we differentiate, let's look at an example. So just now I mentioned that for SAP school, other than the AL score, there is also the score for higher Chinese that will be taken into consideration. So in this case here, this example here, we have 6 candidates. In the event that the school's cutoff point is actually 8 marks, AL 8, then you find that in this case here, the students are actually ranked within the students who are 2nd to 5th, who are all having AL 8. They are actually being ranked according to their score in higher mother tongue. The better their higher mother tongue's performance, the higher will be their priority. Okay, and the higher the chances of them getting admitted if the cutoff is at AL 8. Okay, it depends on how many places is left. So the cutoff might be distinction, cutoff might be at merit, cutoff might be at pass. Okay, so that higher taking of the higher mother tongue would then get our child to be in a better position. Even if the child is just passed, it's still better than no higher Chinese in terms of the ranking and priority. Okay, so that shows an example about the advantages that the higher mother tongue language will provide for children who are considering admission into secondary school. Okay, particularly SAP schools. All right, so these are reasons that I've mentioned before. Okay, so these are just in words that we can say, but let me maybe further elaborate on the last point. So we talk about getting our children to focus on pushing their language capability to the higher level if they have that kind of inclination. Why is that important? So our mother tongue languages, particularly for Chinese and Malay language, let's look at the situation here. We are in ASEAN, okay, and in ASEAN countries, we find that all our mother tongues are being used in the ASEAN countries. Of course, quite a large majority will be the Malay language itself, but in key market areas, Chinese is also there, and India, in terms of the the economy is also taking off. So if you look at the left chart, you'll find that when we compare with the 5 largest markets, ASEAN is actually ranked 3rd in terms of the size of the market. And that's the potential that ASEAN has in terms of the kind of market share that we can hold. And that's the thing that I think our ASEAN leaders have been trying to promote ASEAN to the rest of the world about the potential that we have in terms of the size of our market. Because when combined together, our ASEAN market is not small. It is actually amongst the top 5. So that's the part on the size of the market. On the right-hand chart, you will see that the economy, the size of the economy, okay, you'll find that we are also ranked amongst the top 5 in terms of the size of our economy. So of course, in this case here, we find that we are actually ranked 5th, right? So it shows that we actually have a lot more potential to develop. That's why you hear our leaders keep telling us and the rest of the world that ASEAN is a up and coming market. There is still a lot of room for improvement and development. And therefore, there's a lot of opportunity available for people to invest, for people to develop. So if the future is in ASEAN, then our children, when they grow up, arming with another language that will give them that advantage when they operate within ASEAN, or even within, if we say that, okay, other than ASEAN, let's include India and China as well. You'll find that this is the kind of future that our children are facing, and therefore the mother tongue capability is actually opening up doors for them, be it in ASEAN or be it in China and India as well. All right, so that's the kind of emphasis that we want to say. In terms of the school choices, okay, so just now we mentioned about how there are schools that are offering Malay language elective program and Tamil language elective program, and you will see that these are 3 of the schools that I think particularly in recent years we see that they are popular among our students. So for MLEP, you will find that Anderson, which is in the Ang Mo Kio area, Bukit Panjang on the west side, but with MRT, I think the access to the schools on the west side is also pretty easy for those of us living in the Woodlands area. And for those of us who want to consider the east side, Tanjong Katong Secondary School is also another MLEP school. Looking at TLEP, Riverside is within our Woodlands community. And if not, if we look at Yishun Town Secondary in the Yishun, we also have many of our students who will keep the Yishun schools in their radar screen in terms of their in terms of their secondary school choices, because again, transportation from Woodlands to Yishun is also not very far. So there are many of our children who are willing to commute to a secondary school in Yishun. So you'll find that both Riverside and Yishun Town will be top in terms of our children's consideration for TLEP, and that we have had, I think last year we have at least, I think 1 child who was admitted to Yishun Town through DSA because using Tamil language. For those of us who feel that, if these two schools are not in your radar screen, Commonwealth Secondary in the west side is also again easy for us to access from the Woodlands side. So these are the possibility. SAP school, I think for those of us who have that interest, you will know the various SAP schools that are in Singapore. They have been around in many years. Some of the popular ones that are closer to our Woodlands area will be schools like Cat High, St. Nick's, Chung Cheng Main, Dunman High, and of course River Valley as well. Okay, so these are the schools that we have. So that would be about the subject choices when it comes to foundation subjects, or when we consider the higher mother tongue subject choices. So how does the whole thing actually work? So the children at primary 4 will be sitting for our school-based examination. Then, as we have mentioned before, based on the performance at the end of year P4 exam, and also in addition to the child's overall performance throughout the year, the school will therefore recommend a subject combination. And as mentioned before, we will try to keep our children in standard subject as far as possible. And parents' option, okay, so this is part of the procedure. MOE will want our parents to be exercising the option. If you opt for the child to take foundation and we feel that your child should be taking standard, we will actually probably call you up and try to convince you. So that will be something that we will do. And again, in terms of the taking of higher mother tongue, if your child actually qualifies, our teachers feel that your child can do it and you opted not to do it, I think again, our teachers will also want to get in touch with you in terms of that subject option. So again, we want to try to make sure that we communicate, and if let's say your option is not quite in line with how we have wanted to operate, then we might want to have a conversation with you just to understand what are your considerations, and perhaps maybe there are certain area or certain lines that we can discuss and shed more lights so that you can understand that choice a bit better. Yeah. So but for most situations, and I think across the years, most of the time, I think parents tend not to have issue with our recommendation, and even those who have opted, maybe we feel that no, your child can be challenged, can take higher mother tongue, can take similar subject. After a phone call, after a discussion, generally those are fine. And at P5 level, of course, the child will go through that subject combination as what we have planned for them, and then we will assess them along the way, and if they are they are okay, we will allow them to continue until the end of year exam, which again they will take, and then from which we will then make a decision as to whether the child should continue taking standard subject and higher mother tongue at P6 level. Again, our benchmark that we draw is also very low. 20 marks is the mark that we draw. Again, the part that we are concerned is whether the child will get an AL8. If the child is not in danger of getting an AL8, we generally will want to encourage the child to continue taking the subject at standard level. Okay, and just to say that at the national level, at P5 level, the decision is made by the school, and the school decision is final. But we just want to say that we will still consult you. But just to say that, like we hope that when we consult you and we have that discussion, is to be able to get a kind of agreement from you. Ultimately, we would, our decision will be final. I mean, I know it probably doesn't sound very nice when I say it this way, but really what we want is that we do not want to disadvantage the child. But then again, I also want to say that we also want to get your buy-in. So we also do want a case whereby the school just unilaterally make a decision that as parent you feel very uncomfortable. Okay, we want to safeguard our children's interest, and we will try our best to convince you if we feel that yeah, your decision might not be in the best interest of the child, or might be more limiting for your child as compared to our own option. So that's that. But again, just to share, nationally, the MOE's rule is that P4 parents option, we will base on that, and we will lean towards that in terms of the allowance for the subject combination. But once at P5, the school will make the final decision. So that's a national policy. Okay, the child will take the subjects at P6 as what we have decided at P5. And sometimes, I think for those of us with older children, before, you will notice that sometimes we also make another cut again at the end of term 1. So for some children that we say that, okay, the child did not perform very well at P5, but we want to give them another 3 months to try, okay, before we make that final decision. So the child actually will have another 3 months in P6 to try to, do their best attempt at trying to keep at standard. And then if at the end of that we say, no, really cannot already, and I think to continue with standard is going to be too risky, then we will recommend for the child to drop to foundation subject. So knowing that, so this is just to show that where are the decision point that we are making, and which are the kind of leaning against that we are taking at the different level. P4 leaning towards parents' decision, P5 leaning more towards the school decision, P6 having another 3 months to try if need to. Okay, so that's basically kind of sum up the way the whole operation goes from P4 all the way to P6. All right, so that's all from us this afternoon. So just wondering whether there are questions that we can address. Let me maybe just open up the Q&A. Okay, so All right, so missing Chongqing High Yishun in the secondary school list. Now, just want to say that Chongqing High Yishun, yes, is a popular school. And in terms of DSA, we know that Chongqing High School Yishun is related to Chongqing Main, which is a SEP school. The differentiation is that Chongqing High Yishun is not a SEP school. So that's why we did not list it in that list there, because it is not a SEP school. But the part that is still the same is that being of that same nature of having a strong focus in the Chinese language, the child having a higher Chinese score might give the child an edge over other children in terms of admission. But that consideration probably would only be done from a DSA perspective, because the school, Chongqing High Yishun, is officially not a SEP school. So in terms of the cutoff point consideration, let's say in the example just now, the cutoff point is 8. Okay, the school cannot differentiate by saying that, oh, I want to look at the higher Chinese score and then prioritize using that. Chongqing Yishun will not be able to do that. They will have to lump all the students with AL8 together and then ballot as a whole. Okay, so that's the way the school will operate. That is different from Chongqing Main, because Chongqing Yishun is not a SEP school. Okay, and that's why that school is not included in the listing just now. All right, so I hope I've answered that question. Next question is about if the student take both mother tongue and higher mother tongue, they can choose to use either mother tongue. No, just to say that the mother tongue score will be AL1 to AL6, the same as all the other subjects. There are only 4 subjects that will use the score of AL1 to AL8. All right, higher mother tongue, the scoring rubric is different. Higher mother tongue is distinction, merit, pass. So that distinction, merit, pass cannot be added to the score for their total AL score. So it's not as though that the higher mother tongue has 1 to 8 as well, and then you can choose the best of the 2 subjects and then use that to add on for your total AL score. No, it doesn't work that way. Okay, so the scoring for higher mother tongue, just to say again, is in the scale of distinction, merit, pass. Okay, and then maybe ungraded. Okay, so that's all there is, and that score will be printed separately, and it will not be added to the total AL score. The total AL score must be EL, mother tongue, science, and math. Okay. Next question. At which point will support be rendered to students after P4 end of year? I think the support will start right from the start when the child enter P5. Okay, we would actually group the children accordingly, and then particularly for those that are weaker, and particularly those that we say we are pushing for them to take standard subject, even though they are probably relatively weak. The support actually will be rendered. Those of us who have older children, you will know that for the weaker classes, we actually have pull-out program, that we actually have extra additional teachers that will pull out some of the weaker students to have more intensive coaching. All right, higher mother tongue need to stay back. Yes, I think they need to stay back for, I think, 1 hour in addition. 1.5 hours, sorry, 1.5 hours more than the other students. So that's the additional time that they will spend in the subject as well. Okay, but again, as we have said, the time spent will be worth the while in terms of building that stronger foundation in your mother tongue language, be it use it for DSA and entry into secondary school, or be it just to have a stronger foundation so that in secondary school you can then spend more time in other subjects. If with higher mother tongue to utilize the DSA option, if any other subjects are weak, would that affect? Yeah, sorry, I think let me go. Never mind. I think with that, because the thing. Okay, no, I'm going unanswered. Yeah, sorry. Let me just go back. Okay, so if with HMT to utilize the DSA option, if there are other subjects that are weak, then would that affect their overall score to enter Anderson or Bukit Panjang? The answer is of course, in a way, yes. But let's look at it this way. Now, DSA is actually having early acceptance of our children based on talent. Now, the way the DSA operates right now is that, let's say, for example, my DSA, let's just consider using the mother tongue. So for Anderson and Bukit Panjang, because they have their Tamil language elective program, or is it Malay? Malay language elective program. So Malay language is my consideration. So if I want to open that as a category for DSA admission, then my main focus will be on the child's capability and understanding of the Malay language and the Malay culture. Okay, if the child is good, I will take the child in. So my decision will be based on that. Now I might check the child's other subjects performance, but generally not. Well, some school, okay, for some school, let's say the schools that like RI, who might not have normal academic and normal technical courses, they might be of a concern, because what if the child is very weak, but I only have express course? Then the child might want to look at the performance in other subjects. But as far as we know, Anderson and Bukit Panjang, they do have normal academic and normal technical course. So if the child in the end, the performance at PSLE is such that the child is not qualified to take express course, then the child will then actually officially will be posted to Anderson or Bukit Panjang Government High in either the NA category or the normal tech category. Okay, so I think my language is not very accurate. The acceptance of the child. So for example, let me rephrase. If I accept the child because the child's Malay language is very strong, okay, then I will not concern about the child's other subject, because ultimately the child, definitely I can take the child in, and I take the child in because Malay language and culture is strong. I can have that richness that I want to look for to enrich my program with people who have that kind of steep understanding. If the child's eventual academic performance is good, stay in express, no problem. Okay, if the child is not so good, then the child might go to NA course, which my school also have. If even weaker, because the other subjects are very weak, it's okay. The child officially can take normal technical course. But in terms of that subject, the child probably can take at the higher mother tongue level. And again, we know that many of these schools, they are also running the full subject-based banding at the secondary level. So that is also becoming a reality in these schools as well. So certainly, I think in this case here, if I'm the school doing the DSA, the other subject most likely will not be a very strong consideration. Okay, but then again, I cannot speak for them. They are the school that will make their own decision. But it's just more like, if I try to imagine myself to be in their position, the other subjects might not be a key consideration. All right, so that we might take. All right, going back to the open questions. Students will be banded again into different classes in P5 and P6, or are they banded by subjects? Okay, the way we do it in this way, yes, the child again will be banded into different classes. We generally, again, we have about 3 bands. And the part that we were mentioning, particularly for the foundation subject. So generally for the rest of the classes, the expectation is that the children will be taking all standard subjects. So the only foundation subjects combination will appear in one class. We keep that to all in one class. Okay, and that is the class whereby we will again have differentiations, whereby when it comes to the subject itself, if there are students taking foundation level, then they might get pulled out from that class. So we do band them in that way, but there will be only one class with the foundation subject combination. Okay, and it will be quite mixed. So for the different subject, you'll find that particularly at P6, when the dust is settled and we make decision as to who are the students who might be taking foundation mother tongue, foundation English, or foundation math, or even foundation science. Okay, so depending on the different combination, the child might be taken out at the different subject for that banding purposes. Okay. Yep. So okay. Yep, so we'll maybe give a bit of time for additional questions if somebody else is still typing. Yeah, I was going to say can unmute, but I think in this webinar, yeah, count, there are certain. Okay, so there's another question here that I did not answer. So, disappeared. Okay, wait, let me see. Wait, yeah, scroll down. Okay, so there's a question here about, can my child opt for P5 higher mother tongue, although my child's P4 final mother tongue score is not qualified? No, it's fine. I think for us here again, so this one here, maybe I didn't explain in that way. Yes, 70 marks would be the cutoff point whereby the school will strongly recommend for the child to take higher mother tongue. But if the child score less than that, less than 70 marks, but if the parents still want the child to take higher mother tongue, we do accept. We do accept. Yeah. And that's why that's the area that sometimes we find that that's why we say the 70 marks is actually just a gauge. So these are the 70 marks is the gauge whereby if the parents did not opt for higher mother tongue, we will try to push. We will go to the parents and we will call them up. But lower than that, we allow the parents to choose. If you feel strongly that even my child did not score up to 70 marks, but I still want the child to try higher mother tongue, go ahead, opt for that, and we will accept. And in our experience, just to share with everyone, is that we actually have been, quite encouraged, because in these cases, right, even if they score below 70 marks, we find that when the parents have that strong support, actually the 70 marks is just a gauge. The child scoring worse than 70 marks with that family support would actually eventually do well in higher mother tongue as well. So that's the thing that we have observed through the years, and therefore our policy is as such. So not to worry, if your child did not meet the 70 marks and you still want your child to take higher mother tongue, opt for it, and we will accept. All right, thank you. Okay, we'll just maybe give a few minutes for any other questions. Okay, one more question coming in. So for students who are taking 4 subjects as standard subjects, will they be banded into different classes in 5 and 6 per that total marks, or are they banded by subjects? They will be banded by the total considerations. Yep. So it will not be banded by a subject. It is timetabling wise, it's just too complicated. Because so meaning that the banding and the pull out will only be done for one class, which is the banded, which is the class that has foundation combination. Okay, the rest of them we will actually group them by their overall scores into the 2 categories of classes. And again, I think that we don't want parents to be too what, that my child must be in the, I don't know, best class or something like that. I just want to say that actually through the years we find that, because I mean, I hope your children have been sharing with you that the school leaders, we do regular lesson observations and we walk into all the classes, right? If you ask me, I don't feel that there's a difference. Okay, and please don't tell me that, oh, because you're the principal, you walk into the class, of course, everybody will keep quiet. It's not about that. It is actually about the kind of, if they are serious about their studies. Actually, when I walk into the classroom, I never ask, hey, is this the best class or number 2 class or number 3 class? I never ask that. And most of the time I walk in, I sense the learning culture that is in the class. I usually am very happy. Okay, I'm usually very happy. Yeah, and the differentiation, if you ask me, when I walk into the classes, it's not that great. And most of the time, when I sense that some classes learning culture is not so positive, it usually is not even have anything to do with their ability. It has to do with their maybe social and interpersonal relationship and things like that. That actually shape that rather than their academic ability. Okay, so not to worry about that, but I'm just sharing that's how we do our banding for our students. So the school will pick up top 80 and split them into 2 classes, yeah, something like that. Okay, we just be very open about it. Our classes are banded, so we band them across several classes. So we don't have this thing about like a top class and then a number 2 class, a number 3 class, a number 4 class. No. They are actually banded broadly. So there will be several classes of roughly the same ability. Okay. And we are not announcing who. Okay, because we know, I mean, from the question, we know that parents are still very much about that. So we, and of course we know parents, some of you will still insist and you will, based on certain observation and things like that, try to guess. Okay, but we leave it to the parents to guess. We are, as a school officially, we are not going to make any of such distinction and we are not announcing that. Okay, we will treat all of them wherever is their level. We will work our best with them. And really, through the years, if we look at our result, really, we don't have that kind of fixed mindset about that. Oh, they are in this kind of class and therefore their result is like that. No. And we have always been pleasantly surprised by students who, wherever they are in whatever classes, they work hard, they will achieve. They can be in the top classes, and if they don't work hard, the result will still be mediocre. Okay, so we want our children to be really working on that. All right, so we hope parents will support us on that and really believe in our children. Our children, yeah, really, if they put their hearts into doing their best, then they will reap the result that they deserve. All right, yeah. Okay, I'm thinking time is about up. We are left with 2 minutes. But generally, I think we have answered most questions. And if you have other questions, do feel free to raise it to the teachers and to our year heads, and they will be more than happy to clarify with you. And if not, the school leaders, we can also come in to explain more with you. All right. So thank you very much, parents, for joining us this afternoon. So have a good weekend. It's a long weekend, so have a good break. Yeah, and thank you very much. Bye-bye. Thank you. No. Yeah, thank you.